Riz Possnett. Hello, Riz. Good afternoon to you.
Hi, Vanessa. Thanks for having me on again.
Good to see you again. What are your thoughts? Let's first of all get your thoughts on the arrests on the day, and then we'll get your thoughts on the Met Police Chief's comments today about them. What do you think of your friends and colleagues being arrested in this way?
Yeah, I mean, we're completely aware that this is insane. Like, these arrests were completely without basis and entirely unjustified and unlawful. We're conscious of that, and I expect the Republic and those arrested will absolutely be pursuing legal action on that basis. The reality is, this was the Republic protest, the anti-monarchy protest, was liaised with police weeks or months in advance. They were well aware of every aspect of the plans to peacefully demonstrate without disruption on the day. And yet they went in and arrested people. And not only is it dubious that they had intelligence that caused them, that necessitated that, because that simply didn't exist because there were no plans for disruption. But furthermore, upon arresting them, they used the public order legislation, which has been shoved through a mere week ago in preparation for the coronation, and tried to arrest people on the basis of having lock-on devices when, if I'm correctly informed, there was a single padlock used to hold placards in place and close the van up. It's not only was the intent to arrest in the first place ridiculous and unfounded, but upon the arrest and holding them in cells all day, all of that time, it would have been completely apparent to the arresting officers and to more senior officers that there were no grounds for this arrest.
If the 6 people arrested had been allowed to protest in peace, what was the plan? What would they have done throughout the duration of the coronation ceremony itself? Where would they have stood? How would they have stood? What would they have done? What was the plan?
The plan for those protesters who were arrested was to do the exact same thing as the protesters who managed to make it on the day and weren't arrested. They intended to hold placards and wear T-shirts and peacefully protest the coronation on behalf of many British people who feel that this doesn't represent their interests at all.
And so what do you think the repercussions are going to be? I know obviously there's a great deal of anger, a great deal of outrage, and there is definitely a groundswell of opinion growing in momentum about this. Don't know whether Sir Mark Rowley having doubled down in this way will make it worse or better, not sure yet. But what are the consequences going to be of this behaviour?
So, like, absolutely, though, I expect there will be consequences for the Met Police, because I expect that those arrested will pursue further action against the police. And that is not only the 6 protesters with Republic who were arrested, but also I think there was around 50 arrests, if I'm correctly informed, that many other people were also unjustly arrested. And we need to be talking about those cases as well, because they're entirely ridiculous. And I think it's really likely with regards to those cases that it will eventually come to light, as with the Republic cases, that there was no plot foiled, and all of this intelligence is misleading, if not made up. Now, we'll have to see how that goes and see what evidence we receive, but that would entirely...
Riz, there are people saying, look, this was a once-in-a-lifetime thing. We haven't had a coronation for 70 years. It was enormously expensive, costing upwards of £200 million. You know, hundreds of thousands of people had descended on the capital to enjoy it. Nothing could or should be allowed to go wrong for those few hours on that one day, once and one time only in 70 years. And therefore, the right thing to do was to arrest and incarcerate for a very short time, and of course not press charges against, and of course not take it any further, the people who might have been the perpetrators or the catalysts for some kind of violent action, or some kind of non-violent action that nevertheless might have spooked the horses, whether it was setting off a rape alarm, whether it was throwing paint or water or something of that kind. And I think there definitely is a body of opinion which says, on a once-in-a-lifetime occasion like that, extra measures are needed so that the vast majority of people can enjoy a very expensive and meticulously timed extravaganza and ceremony without somebody putting a spoke in the wheels and spoiling it. They would think that, you know, democracy being put on ice for a few hours at most is not the worst possible thing in those circumstances. Of course, if it were to happen every day, that would be an abomination.
Well, I appreciate your point, Vanessa, if I could respond to that.
Yes.
First of all, yes, you've had me on to talk before. I've discussed, and I won't go into detail now, about how expensive this event was and how ridiculous that expense is in the first place. We talked about disruption, and your earlier guest said that people should be allowed to go about their lives without serious disruption, and that might have been a basis for these arrests. Are you kidding me? Like, I would say the coronation absolutely caused serious disruption in London. The reality is these protesters just had no intent to do that in the first place. Now, with regards to your comments about putting democracy on ice for a few hours, I think that's a seriously concerning line to take. You simply can't just unjustly arrest people and say, oh, it's got to be done, like, don't even worry about it. That's not how this works. I don't know if you've ever spent time in a cell, but it's awful. It's genuinely a traumatizing experience. And we just can't go about unjustly arresting people without any lawful cause. Now, it's absolutely true that this happened on the day, and we could have seen that coming, but that's because this is a pattern of behavior with the Met. Like, we've seen consistently over the last few years, and actually throughout the Met's history, and the history of policing in the UK, the tendency, or like foundational premise, of preventing peaceful protest.
Except there's been an outcry against the Met and other police forces for failing to do anything much about the Just Stop Oil protesters and the Extinction Rebellion protesters, who were absolutely peaceful but were blocking people from going about their daily lives. Ordinary people just trying to live a normal life. And you know, and a great deal of shade was thrown on police forces for not doing anything to stop the peaceful protest. So, you know, it's an interesting one, Riz. I'm going to have to leave you. Thank you so much for joining us.